In this demonstration, we're going to look at troubleshooting some common wireless problems. We're not going to talk about troubleshooting wireless controllers, the backhaul, and the access. Instead, we're going to look at end-user problems you might have to troubleshoot to get user systems connected to the wireless network. The assumption here is that we've confirmed that the wireless network is working and the problem is with the client. The first one we're going to look at is one where the end user has accidentally disabled the wireless adapter. And believe me, this happens all the time, especially on notebook systems. You get a help desk call. You go to troubleshoot the problem. The user says, "I can't connect to the wireless network," and you look and you see that they've accidentally turned the wireless adapter off. That's what's happened with this particular Windows system. Notice down here that we don't have a network connection. The reason we don't have any network connections is because the wireless network adapter is disabled. So I'm going to turn the wireless adapter on. On this particular model, I can do that by pressing the function key plus the F12 key. Or I can simply click down here and see that they somehow turned it off. They may have also put it into airplane mode, and that is, essentially, the same sort of problem. If the problem is with the button on the machine, you have to look around and find out where it is on your device. Okay, so I've re-enabled the wireless adapter, but let's look to make sure we're connected to the right wireless network. If I click on this icon, I can see the list of all the wireless networks that are currently in range. You can see that I have several. One is named Not Your Wireless. Here's another called WACC. If I want to connect to one of these networks, I simply click on it here, and then I have the option to connect to that wireless network. Because I've never connected this system to this wireless network before, I'm prompted here as to whether or not I want to connect automatically every time this wireless network is in range. If I leave this option turned on, then a wireless profile will be automatically created for me in the Network and Sharing Center that contains all the necessary parameters to connect to this wireless network. We don't have to do that if we don't want to. I can leave that turned off and then I can connect just this one time. The parameters that I specify won't be saved. I'm going to leave it on and go ahead and click Connect. Now I need to provide the security key. I happen to know that this network is using WPA2. Notice over here that there is an option to show characters if you need to confirm that you typed the key in correctly. I'll click Next, and we're prompted to decide if we want our PC to be discoverable on the network. I'll just select No. We're connected to the WACC network. We have no internet access, but we resolved the issue of the disabled wireless button. So now let's look at another issue. Another problem you're going to run into is one where the end user has put in the incorrect pre-shared key on a wireless network that uses a pre-shared key such as WPA2 PSK. This is also a very common problem because with WPA and WPA2, the security key that you put in is case sensitive. WEP, which is an older wireless standard, uses hexadecimal characters. So you can use uppercase or lowercase with it, but we don't recommend using WEP any longer. Let's suppose that my wireless key was working just fine yesterday for the Not Your Wireless network, but the system administrator has gone in and changed the pre-shared key on the access point. Therefore, the pre-shared key that I currently have saved on this system in the wireless profile isn't going to work anymore. What I might want to do in this case is delete this network and then reconnect. If I go to Start and then Settings, select Network and Internet, go over to Wi-Fi, and finally to Manage Known Networks, you can see that I have a profile defined for the Not Your Wireless network. I'm going to click on it and select Forget. Now let's go back and reconnect to it and enter the new passphrase that I received from the network admin. I'm going to click on my wireless icon, and I'm going to connect to Not Your Wireless. I'll enter in my credentials and select No here. Now we're connected again with full internet access. Understand that most modern wireless access points can be configured to run in the 5 GHz mode, 2.4 GHz mode, or mixed mode, where the point supports both standards. One radio runs 5 GHz and one radio runs 2.4 GHz. That's really handy because it supports a wide range of devices. The problem is that you can't use that 2.4 GHz radio for your 5 GHz communications. If you turn your 2.4 GHz off, you can use that extra radio and antenna for your 5 GHz clients and actually increase throughput using MIMO or multiple input, multiple output technology. However, this can be a problem if your users have old wireless network cards in their systems that only support 802.11g. If that's the case and you turn off the 2.4 GHz radio, then they won't be able to connect to their wireless network. Let's go in and see how this works. I'm logged into this dual band wireless router. I haven't configured it yet, so I'm just going to click the Login button here. I'm going to go up to Wireless and then the Basic button. Over here to the right, I have the option to uncheck the 2.4 GHz wireless. If you have clients that can connect, it could be that they have a 2.4 GHz radio trying to connect to your 5 GHz wireless network. Before we end this demo, I'll mention just a few options you might try. You can check and make sure that no one has modified the IP settings on the client. You can check and see if Windows recently did any updates to the wireless drivers. I can do that by going to the Start button, Settings, Update and Security, and clicking on Update History. I can then look at my updates and see if there's anything new here. It's always recommended that you obtain drivers from the manufacturer's website. Finally, you can go down to the network icon, right-click, and select Troubleshoot Problems. That's it for this demonstration. In this demo, we talked about how to troubleshoot common wireless problems. First, we looked at issues where we have a disabled wireless adapter on a network host. We looked at problems that happen when we use the wrong pre-shared key. Then we talked about how a client might have a 2.4 GHz host trying to connect to a 5 GHz access point.